We immediately saw some pressure on our ability to get information to people. And because we have such a wide variety of ministry initiatives here, it was hard to get the right information to all of those people. I'm Chris Collins. I'm the executive pastor here at Oro Valley Church of the Nazarene. I've been a part of this church for 12 years now and on staff in some form or capacity for about 10 years, but specifically I've been the executive pastor for the last 6 years. I am kind of in charge of ministry alignment. So the thing I enjoy doing most is working with our pastoral staff and our ministry leaders to make sure we're all going the same direction. So I think that translates to probably where my heart is for the people that come to OVCN. I want anybody that comes to be a part of our church to know the direction we're going, where God's leading us, and then how they can be a part of that. Distinctly for OVCN, we are what I would call a true cradle-to-grave church. What I mean by that is I think lots of churches today can launch and start new and be anything that they want, right? We can be really focused on young people, or we are a church that sets up a temporary location, a movie theater or school, and we're going to target one specific group of people, and we're going to build a church and a church community off of that target audience. And for us, a church that's been around over 40 years now, we're dedicating children on Sundays, and we're also ministering to a lot of families who are going through grief because of loss of loved ones and funerals and everything in between. So when I say we're a cradle-to-grave church, I mean we're trying to reach and minister to everybody, no matter what age group or demographic you're in, and that presents challenges. You got to figure out how to communicate well to all of those groups of people, and you got to figure out how to do ministry in a way that makes everybody feel like we're going the same direction. And so I think that's part of the uniqueness of who we are, but it also is one of the greatest challenges we have. So probably 5 or 6 years ago, we started seeing what we would call exponential growth. I'm not sure really how you would define that in terms of how many people you see coming to your church, but we started seeing some exponential growth. And so we immediately saw some pressure on our ability to get information to people. And because we have such a wide variety of ministry initiatives here, it was hard to get the right information to all of those people. One of the internal conversations we were having with ministry leaders and pastoral staff was, hey, this event didn't go very well, and it's because people didn't know about it. This event wasn't attended like we thought it should be attended because we started too late in the process. Maybe one that lots of church staff people can relate to. If Craig, our senior pastor, doesn't say it from the pulpit, then it won't happen. And I think that's one of the things that lots of churches deal with that are kind of in this growing phase. And so that's where we were at. And we had to figure out, really we started making this, asking this question internally, like, how can we communicate effectively without Craig having to say something from the front on a Sunday so that our people would know? And that's really what kind of started us on this conversation internally about how we're going to get better at communication and marketing to our own people. So I'd say we were exploring options related just to our CRM and what we were using for the data that we were collecting on our people, but we didn't have any idea how we were going to take that data and turn that into any type of solution to communicate better with our people. That really came about after a conversation with Blue, and he kind of cast the vision for what StudioC was doing, and he had kind of said, hey, I really think it could help a church like you guys with where you're at now and what you're trying to do. And so that's really where it started for us. So we didn't shop around a lot of different solutions, but in part it was because what StudioC was providing and what they were describing to us, it made perfect sense, and it hit all the criteria that we felt like we were looking for and how we were going to communicate better. I would say one of the big things for us and our staff, at least our leadership team, was some of what we're dealing with in this process doesn't feel churchy. It feels very kind kind of market and business and marketing communication strategy, and it was kind of taking that and filtering it. Well, those aren't necessarily church terms. That's not what we do in church, right? It was, how do we take all of those things and kind of find some balance and some comfort in, well, that might not be a church term, but it actually is more effective at communicating the church things we want to than what we were doing previously. And so we had some internal conversations about that, trying to figure out, okay, we do have all of this data. What are we supposed to do with it to make a better experience for people who are attending our church? And then kind of getting past that initial, we're going to have to take that information and utilize it in a way that gets people the information they need when they need it. And there were some growing pains there. So even before the app started rolling out, I think as we talked to our ministry leaders about it, there was some tension there about, what are we trying to accomplish by doing this, right? What it would mean in terms of how we do certain parts of ministry, right? How do we sign up for events and how do we communicate those things? You mean we're not going to do an email newsletter? You mean we're not going to have paper sign-ups? You mean we're not going to have registration cards? And those are the things that our ministry leaders and even our admin team and the people internally, we had to sort through some of that. Well, no, this is kind of a burn the ships moment where we're going to move away from that into a new way of communicating. And I don't know if this was your term or our term, but something that we just kind of termed, it's going to be a force multiplier. We're going to take away every opportunity to register for things or to be a part of things except for through our app, using the data that we have so that we can create a better experience for the people that are a part of our church family. So as we rolled that out to our church family, we really got aggressive with our communication of that and why we were moving to it. And really what we explained to our church family was, for the people that are here and you know what's going on in our church and you've been here for a while, you're not playing catch up. You know all of the information. What we have to do is we've got to get better at helping that person that's coming in for the first time, that person that's been here for a month. We've got to get better at helping them understand how and where they can get plugged in. And I think more importantly, what is it that we're asking of you as a church? What does a disciple look like at OVCN? Because the reality is disciples look a little bit different depending on what church you're a part of. So I think as we got into what StudioC could provide in terms of communicating through that app experience for our people, is we were able to streamline a lot of the processes for us behind the scenes. So as our team looked at an event that was coming out and we're 4 or 5 or 6 months out from that event, now we were able to better build a communication plan for that. Set registration deadlines, early bird registration kind of incentives, being able to put information in front of people that they knew was important to them so they didn't just click past it or scroll on like they would in an email, trying to make sure that they felt like they had the power to gain information every time they go on their app, as opposed to us trying to force it upon them, via email or signage at church or, a card that's a part of an insert for your bulletin or whatever it might be. But giving the people the chance to access the information as often as they wanted to, and then hopefully building trust in that information so that they know, hey, this matters to me, so I need to look at it. And I think, being able to kind of streamline that and help people understand that if you're seeing this in your feed, it's because it's important for you and it matters for you in your next steps here at OVCN. That was a really important part of the crafting that communication plan for us. So number one of the things we found out really early was who was kind of adapting to this new form of communication. And we really did burn the ships. I mean, that's really the best term. We took away all paper registration at our info center, at informational type of events. It was, look, if you want to register for an event or you need information, we need you to do it through the app. we pushed the giving through the app as well. We had online giving already, but it was through the website. Being able to access that through the app meant that it gave people a chance to get on their app, see their dashboard as a part of their giving, for their tithes and offerings and special events and things of that nature. But one of the things I think we found out early was that when we force people to go to the app to be a part of events and things that are happening at the church, our 55 plus community actually adapted quicker than our younger generation. And I couldn't believe it. When we had a conversation about, hey, where are we at 4 or 5 months in? It was like our 55 plusers were all in. And we joked in the office that was probably because, they're on there all the time, playing Candy Crush anyway. So not a problem for them to get on the OVCN app. But what it did identify for us was that there's only so much app space, I think, for that younger generation. They don't mind downloading apps, but they want a good reason for it. And so we had to just kind of stay the course for our younger generation and just make sure they knew that, man, everything that you need to be connected and know what's going on at OVCN is in that app. And we just kind of stayed the course on that. And we just saw this transition over time, 6, 8, 10 months. And after a year, people just realizing that if I want to know what's going on around here at OVCN, I've got to be in the app. But it's important to remember, too, that's only for your existing people, right? The new person that's walking in, they won't know any other norm. And so that was part of what we were trying to relay to our church family was, hey, this is going to be you're going to have to adapt if you've been here, but we're doing it so that the new people that are coming in aren't confused. They know exactly where to go and exactly what to do. So from our staff perspective, there was some internal struggle with our staff too, and here's what was happening. We never knew in the past if an event was successful because it was a good event, because it hit a need. We also didn't know if it was not successful because people didn't know about it or because it wasn't a good event. And so now we have this data to say, hey, number one, we know a lot of people looked at that event because we could see they clicked on it. Well, we also know they didn't register for it. And so it wasn't because they didn't know, it was because it wasn't a good event. And we're going to stop doing it. And so there were lots of conversations around things like that really, really helped us, get rid of some things, start some new things, but just have real honest conversations and be very candid about, hey, people didn't sign up for this event because they didn't know about it. They didn't sign up for this event because it didn't hit a need they had. And so from a ministry alignment and ministry effectiveness, man, we got better really quick at figuring out what are the types of things we need to provide for our people and what is it that they need to be a part of. So for us, the initial strategy session included our executive team, then our marketing and communications director, and then Blue and members of his team that were a part of that. We purposefully kept that team pretty small because we didn't yet know exactly what we were looking for. And that was why that one-day strategy session was so important for me. And often I get asked as I talk to people about our experience with StudioC, they're like, should we do the one-day thing? Is that really helpful? Or can we skip that? And what I tell people is, if you feel really confident in knowing what a disciple looks like at your church and what you're asking people to do, then you could probably skip that session. But for us, we were trying to get our arms around how are we communicating? What are we communicating? And more importantly, what are we communicating for? And so that was a tremendously beneficial day for us where the StudioC team was able to ask us pretty candid questions about, well, if this is what you're about, what does that look like? How do you define that? How much do you need people to do that? How often do you want them to do that? Do you really think you need to say both of these things, or could you just say one of them? And so one of the things I joke about with people I talk to is we actually, in that meeting, we were kind of told, hey, you got too many next steps. There's too many badges. There's too many things you guys are asking people to do. You need to pare it down. And we kind of looked at Blue and Andrea and we were like, man, we think this is who we are. And we think we got this right. This is it. And so then they looked at us and said, okay, if you feel convicted about that, then now you know what it looks like to be a disciple at OVCN. Let's do it. So we have 9 badges. I think they want you to have 5 or 6, but you can do anything you want. You just tell them. So I'll give you an example of that. So one of the big debates we had kind of during that day was whether or not we needed a next step and a badge for membership. We've always pushed membership really hard at our church. Part of the reason we push that hard at OVCN is not just because it's a denominational metric that's used to kind of speak about the health of a church, but for us, it was one of those things that we felt like we could tangibly get our arms around for believers who were coming to OVCN. So not the non-believer, but the already believer that's decided that they want to be at OVCN. And we just felt like, man, the membership badge, that membership step in the discipleship process, for the believer especially, kind of identifies, hey, I'm going the direction that you are. I'm in on the direction we're heading, and I want to be a part of that. And I remember the discussion kind of being, well, hey, membership is kind of a given. If they're doing all these other things, I don't know that we really need that. And that was one of the things that we just said, no, we felt really strongly that that's part of who we are, and it's one of those really initial first steps that we want to continue to push people towards. So that's one of the distinctives for us, but we had to wrestle with that in that group, and we got to do it in front of people on the StudioC team that have lots of experience with church growth and church communication and what's effective and what's not. And so it was a really, really healthy dialogue for us. And so that's just one example of something that we had to wrestle with. But I think even ahead of that day, trying to write down, we individually kind of wrote down, well, what is a next step? What are we asking people? What does a disciple of Jesus Christ look like for OVCN and somebody that's fully engaged with what God's doing here? And so, for us, that was it was a vital part of the process. We wouldn't have been able to get off go if we hadn't have done that. It's probably honestly something that we fight here a lot at the moment, is the amount of activity and the amount of things that we're doing, and how do those translate to actual kind of discipleship development? How are we becoming more Christ-like? And if you're just attending everything, that's not necessarily getting you down the road. And so I think one of the things that's helped us is these metrics that we're now able to kind of glean from our StudioC data and how people are interacting with events, and do they want social events? Are they looking for the Bible study type stuff? Are they clicking information about certain programs or certain things that we're offering on missions versus membership? Or where are people's interest once they're in that app? So that data helps us figure out where our people are, and then we can kind of tailor our energy and effort more towards, they're not looking into the missions things as much as we'd like, because that's a really important thing for us at our church. So we need to make sure those things are getting at the top of their feed, right? Or we need to push this out to everybody, not just the people in this group for right now. And so I think that's a constant conversation we're having. We don't want to do busy work. We want to take ground for the kingdom. And so we want to make sure that whatever we're doing is kind of equipping our people to be able to do that. It's probably a great example of how the system works if you'll go all in with it. We had lots of discussions with ministry leaders about, hey, how effective is this going to be? And so we had some ministry leaders who weren't really in favor of it. They didn't think it was going to work. They didn't want to adapt. And so finally we had to look at them and say, hey, this is how we're going to do this. And specifically, we had a situation come up like this with our women's ministry. There were some events and things that were coming up, and they were just really certain that the way to make sure that everybody knew about these events and these things that were happening was to do it the way we had always done it. They wanted kind of the announcement from the front. They wanted Pastor Craig to make the announcement and say it. And we looked at them and said, hey, if you'll allow us to communicate this, we'll be able to get the information to the people that need it, the time that they need it, the way that they need it. And we're really confident that this is going to work. And I wouldn't say that they were in disagreement, but they certainly didn't say, okay, this is going to be great. And it was one of those examples for us that when we had that event, we looked back at the registrations. We had record attendance for it. More ladies showed up and participated in this Bible study than ever had before. And we were able to look at that team, that leadership team, and tell them, hey, we believe part of the reason for that is we were able to effectively communicate that better than we ever had. We didn't just take this shotgun approach where we threw it out there for everybody to hear. We were able to get that message to the women in our church who needed to know about this event, and they responded, and we got more people in the room than we ever had before. And they agreed and thought, yeah, this is a much better and more effective way to communicate than we have been before. And that is a story that's been repeated, especially by what maybe aren't your mainstream, I guess, ministries, if you want to call it. Everybody's got our kids and students, right? And our big church-wide events, but your men's ministry, your women's ministry, your adult 55-plus ministry or your young adult ministry, whatever it might be, those smaller ministries within the church, if you will, those are the ministries for us that have seen the greatest impact of this communication with StudioC, is because we're able to get that detailed information to the person that needs it, and then they can respond. And we know immediately whether or not we've met a need by how many people respond and show up. And so, that's been one way for us we've been able to gauge our success. I think the outside world has an expectation right now when we interact with things in the outside world, in the secular world, there's an expectation of excellence. And so when you've got non-believers or you have new people that are showing up to your church, they're expecting excellence in what you do as well. And if you can't communicate with excellence and you can't give them information, how they need it, when they need it, it's a little bit of a challenge to help them see that excellence that you provide. We have a saying we talk about around here that every decision is a value statement, right? Every decision we make is kind of this indication of what do you value most. And so for us, we've made a value statement in a decision that we're going to invest in the resource of StudioC to make sure that we can provide excellence for our people. We can't do it on our own. We don't have the ability to do it, but a partner like StudioC does. And so now we're able to create this incredible experience for people who are coming to our church either for the first time or they're trying to get engaged in our church, and we're giving them every opportunity to be able to do that. And then we're able to put them in a position time and time again for the Holy Spirit to kind of deal with their heart, and the Holy Spirit to draw them into a deeper and greater relationship with Jesus Christ. But I think that has started in their experience with OVCN because we've been able to communicate well with them. So for us, making that monetary investment, stewarding those resources into partnering with somebody like StudioC, it's a value statement for us. It means that it's really important for us to communicate and market well to our people so they know where they can be involved. Some of the concerns are the overall cost. Do the people at StudioC stay with you, or they just kind of get you going and just walk away? And then they're trying to figure out, how do you quantify the investment? Like, how do you know if it's worth it? And man, I would just say if you're communicating for ministry events, missions opportunities, places where people can get engaged in those next steps, if you're communicating those through an app and StudioC's providing you the data or the interface to use the data to communicate that information, and you show up to an event and you see people being changed by the power of the Holy Spirit, that's evidence that it's worth the investment. Because I don't know if I could get them in the room if it wasn't for the way we're communicating. And so for us, we just look at it as an opportunity to get them in a place where the Holy Spirit can speak to their heart and minister to them. We look at that data pretty regularly to try to figure out how are people interacting with the information we're giving them, with the events we're providing. So I think one of the things, I think the saying goes that you can tell any story you want with stats, right? But the other thing that data does is it doesn't lie. And so when you see things in real numbers, in real time, that are saying, hey, you're not connecting with your people here, they are not interacting with this event, they are not engaging with this ministry in this way, that data is really undeniable. And so then it forces you to look at, okay, we got to make a pivot, we got to make a change, we got to figure out how to more effectively communicate that, because we think it's really important, but our people aren't getting it. And they're not getting it because they don't understand. They're not getting it because we're not doing what we need to do. And so that data helps us figure that out more quickly. And really what it does is it exposes us in areas where we're not getting it done. And then we can figure out how to be more excellent and provide a better experience for the people that are coming to our church. Probably the only thing I haven't said yet that I was thinking I wanted to make sure that people knew, especially executive pastors, was that if you do have a CRM and you've got a database with a bunch of information in it, Blue asked the question early on, what are you doing with that data? And our answer was, well, we're doing nothing. It's in the cloud somewhere, and we feel really good about all of it. And I would just kind of challenge any executive pastor, any leadership team at a church right now that has all that information. StudioC gives you the opportunity to actually do something productive with that and providing an experience for your people that make them feel known at your church. And you owe it to yourselves to explore that, have the conversation, and see what that might look like for you guys wherever you might be and whatever stage of growth you might be at. We had an issue that needed an immediate fix. We weren't doing well at communicating with the certain groups of people, certain ministries for events and activities and things that related to what they were doing. We were talking to everybody about things that didn't apply to everybody. And so as we started seeing our numbers grow, we knew that we couldn't continue in that way. So we just decided that you can either peel that Band-Aid off really slow and you'll have this slow, steady trickle of people who won't like the change you're making, or you can rip it all off at the same time and help people understand why you're doing it. We were able to cast vision and help people understand in our church the reason we're doing that is for the new person that's coming in. The person that's not here yet has to have a better way to communicate with the church. Us that are here, we'll figure that out together. But we got to make the change now because God's bringing people to our church family, and we got to find a better way to communicate. And so if you'll help us with the growing pains, just know and understand that the person that's walking into church for the very first time, they're not going to know anything different. They're going to get the communication they need, the information they need when they need it. But you got to help us make this transition, go through the growth pain with us, get us on the other side of it so that we'll be more effective. And here we are now several years into it. I don't know that anybody even remembers how we used to do it. And part of that is just having enough courage to say, we're going to make a change like this. This has nothing to do with salvation or theology or doctrine. This is just us getting better at trying to communicate with the people that want to be a part of our church family.